Hey there, amplifiers. Glad you could tune in. And they always say this. It's not what you know, it's who you know. But it's not really who you know, it's the relationships that you build. In order to build good relationships, you need to have good communication. So our topic today, superior communication strategies for making stronger connections, is really vital. We have a great guest, Matthew L. Moseley, managing principal of Ignition Strategy Group. But let's talk about what is the big idea. Well, active listening is a key skill for successful negotiation, right? But doing it effectively requires getting out of your own head and developing empathy. So what's the big deal there? Well, negotiation is a critical skill for everything in life, from your career to relationships, right? So the key is negotiation is communication with results. So if you're tuning in now or on the replay, make sure that you're asking questions. We will try to look back for questions that you ask. I want to share your comments and want to make sure that you're taking action. It's not just what you know, it's the actions that you take. And without further ado, I want to make sure that we give a great introduction to our guest. He is communication strategist, author, speaker, and holds 3 world records for long distance swimming, which is pretty damn awesome. He is also the principal and CEO of the Ignition Strategy Group, which specializes in high-stakes communications and issue management for organizations of all sizes. He's got a great roster of clients. And he is also the author of Ignition, which is one of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Superior communication strategies for making stronger connections is what that's supposed to say. Welcome to Growth Amplifiers, Matthew L. Moseley.
Great. Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Happy. It's a wonderful day. Thanks, Kenny.
It is a beautiful day. I'm glad to have you in here and talking about communication. I was just at a networking event. It's actually a conference. It's called Traffic and Conversion Summit in San Diego, California. And it reminded me just how important it is, not just to be connected with people, but to build relationships. So if you could give us kind of like the backstory of kind of what inspired you to get on the focus for authoring this book, Ignition.
You betcha. It's a great question in terms of, everybody says communication is so important. It's so vital. Yet I find that so many people, managers, CEOs, even in their personal relationships, are pretty bad at it. And there's a big paradox here, a big irony in our times, is that we are so hyper connected and so able to communicate and touch and reach out and touch somebody that we can have conversations from Japan to Germany simultaneously, but yet people feel so alone and isolated. So I set out on a 6-year journey to write this book, Ignition, to really talk about those, to uncover what is the problem here, what is happening, and also to give people some strategies for how they can actually create stronger connections. So that's what the book is about. It interviews 25 to 30 people that are experts at the top of their fields and how they use communications for their own worlds and how they be successful, whether it's fighter pilots, astrophysicists, famed authors and journalists. I had the great opportunity of working with the Gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson.
Wow.
We can talk about him a little while later, blowing up bombs in his kitchen.
That sounds dangerous. Don't do this.
Yeah, it was pretty dangerous. But so that forms the basics for, from the front lines of communications and working with all of these clients and all of these interviews and putting them together into a nice, concise book about how people can communicate and make these connections and give them some strategies.
Awesome. So we've got the big 3. So I'm going to introduce them and then we'll kind of go through some of these talking points here. One is the actionable tips to improve our communication. So maybe some of the highlights from some of the stories.
You bet.
2 would be telling us about why Ignition is such an important book for our times. Kind of brushed on that a little bit, but I'm sure we could dive a little bit deeper. And then 3, your call to action is to be a participant, not a spectator. And what does that mean and why it is important? And we'll kind of start it off with just getting some actions that people can consider to improve their communication. So that would be a great first place to start.
You betcha. The second part of the book is divided into 3 different parts. And the second part is really about communications planning. Now, some people kind of yawn, they're like, oh God, communication strategy, communications planning. But I believe that people do not spend enough time actually thinking about what they're going to say. When the cameras are rolling, when your business is on the line, and one small gaffe can cause millions of dollars of damage and ruin careers overnight, it's important. It's vitally important that you get it right and that you plan for it. So I take clients through, and this is whether, we're working with a CEO at the top level, or even somebody that's going to be in front of the camera, prepping a spokesperson for a legislative hearing, really any number of things. Let's talk about a communications plan that could be a 60-page document, or this could be on the back of a napkin. First, we want to know where we're going. It's very important, and not as easy as it sounds. What do you really want to accomplish here? What are we trying to do that is going to make this sing and it's going to make people take action? That's what we have to ask. What do we want people to do? And then we ask ourselves 3 questions that form the basics of any communications plan, from the White House to city council, to a government boardroom, to a global advertising campaign, and even to winning somebody's heart. And that would be the questions. What are we saying? That's our messaging. That's our context. That's the crystallization of everything that's going to come after, and the call to action of what we want people to do. The second would be, who are we saying it to? What are our target audiences? This maybe seem really simple. With one client right now I'm working with, it's just one person. It's the governor. That's all we need to influence. Sometimes it's a little more amorphous. Sometimes it's we say everybody should read this book. Well, it's not for everybody. And then sometimes, talking to an audience, a real quick way to think about it is that sometimes, it's not me. It shouldn't be Matt that's talking, but maybe it's somebody else that's much better equipped to deliver your message, right? We call those third-party validators, and they're legitimizers about who you are and what you need to do. And the last piece, Kenny, which I love, and it's where I like to play, is tactics. This is the how you are going to say it. And there's the myriad of ways that we can do things. We can say things through a podcast or a press release. We can go out on the street corner and wave our arms around. We can send a text or a Facebook post. There's thousands of ways we can communicate. What is the best one that matches our intent and that's going to get the job done with the limited resources of time, money, and people, which is all we have. So if you're going to break that down, a communications plan, what are we saying? Who are we going to say it to? And how? And that's how we can move an issue.
That's really powerful too. One of my mentors is a speaking trainer, helps speakers, craft their messages. And one of his sayings is, winging it is not a strategy. And I couldn't agree more. And I admit there have been times where I've come upon, an opportunity to speak and thought, I know this topic. I'm just going to speak towards it and it'll be all right. But if you get in front of people and you have distractions and you haven't practiced, you haven't really paved that path, you can find this isn't really going the way I intended it to go. And
it's a quick example that I outline in the book is a friend of mine, Eric Rosa, who sold Data Logics to Oracle for $1.2 billion. He was poking around, doing some various things, and the CEO of CrossFit said, "Hey, nobody's mourning for George Floyd. Black lives don't matter." On a call with all the franchises. Well, overnight the whole business tanked. Franchises ran away. Eric Rosa swooped in and bought it for pennies on the dollar and is now rebuilding the franchise. That's one gaffe, one one time, 1 minute of talking and ruined an entire lifetime of business. And, it revealed who he was, but that's can be a big problem.
I was born in Virginia Beach, Virginia, but I was raised in Louisville, Kentucky.
Right.
And Papa John's was the pizza place that was the local place that we always got our, school pizzas from Papa John's. We supported this local company, and it was cool to see them grow into this huge empire where they're sponsoring the NFL. And then, Mr. John gets on a call and he makes a gaffe.
Same thing.
And whether you know the backstory or not, I'm not going to get into the details, but he said something saying that you shouldn't say it. And it's just like, that was not the thing he needed to do.
Kenny, I write about that very episode in my book on crisis communications. That very thing from Papa John's. It was a great example of just, a couple of things, and maybe those things reveal the real person, but was it necessary to ruin lives and careers through those things? But it brings us to your second question, which is, why is this book important for now?
Mm-hmm.
I touched on that earlier about this great paradox of connectivity versus isolation. Why are we so isolated? And in my research through this book, I found that many, paleontologists and scientists have discovered that our sapiens, the sapiens, one of the reasons why we've achieved dominion on this planet is because of our ability to communicate and to collaborate with each other. And from the earliest times, the earliest dawn of the civilization, there were many other sapient tribes roaming the earth. If you think about that for a second, can you imagine how crazy it would be to walk up on like a different human that didn't, completely different? I mean, hell, Kenny, we can't even get along with ourselves, much less could we get along with anybody else, which was the deal, that we were able to drive them off a cliff and achieve dominance because we could collaborate for a greater good. Right. And so I think that is why it's so important. And I write a lot about that in the book about, good communications, good storytelling is about communicating something greater than yourself. It's a greater good. It's a greater enterprise. And I think sometimes we've lost that in our sort of tribal breakdown of society now. And it's kind of, people are very polarized. And I think what's going to make us survive on this planet and thrive is our ability to work together. And we got to get back to that.
Hey there, this is Kenny from Growth Amplifiers, here to ensure you get your awesome ideas into action to grow and improve your business and achieve your full potential. Take the first step by visiting growthamplifiers.com and clicking the Start Here button. Take the assessment to get your personalized score. Then select from free resources to learn how to improve your score. Don't wait. Be proactive and take action now by visiting growthamplifiers.com and clicking the Start Here button. And always keep on amplifying. Now, let's get back to the show. You see that from, just the culture, but also, I've been working with some businesses that are going into some whitewater into their growth, and their teams are, starting to pick up some accidental behaviors that maybe they're not helping the team move its mission forward. And you realize that a lot of the challenges that are coming out of this are due to, lack of clear communication. People say one thing, people hear another. What? They have expectations. They're not clearly communicated. And then they're getting frustrated that things aren't working the way they want. So I see it's important for our times because we do have so much distraction and different types of communication, and people are using, chat apps or Slacks or different types of communication tools to get messages across. But there's a lot that could be lost using those tools.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing, if that you ask yourself as a manager, and some of the best managers and leaders that I've worked with have a really heightened sense of situational awareness and emotional intelligence to read the people around them. If you're in a big utility company and you're in a meeting, right, you have regulatory, you have legal, you have the communications, you have the C-suite, you have people that you're really not sure what they do, and somehow that person who's made, the CEO needs to sort of corral all of those interests, right, and make them all singing from the same script. They're like a grand conductor. Because you ask yourself, you just spoke of it, if people don't know what they're supposed to do and what they're working towards, it makes it really difficult for them to be successful. It just does, and so people that are very good about articulating a vision, those are the ones who do the best. Which leads us, it's a great segue into your third question.
Right.
What does it mean to be a participant, not a spectator? It was a call to the action of the book. And the book began 6 years ago. I was asked to give a talk at this event, Burning Man. And so it was about, it was at the center camp, and it was about Gonzo communications. And they wanted to hear about my work with Hunter S. Thompson.
Like the Muppet? Oh, no.
No, it was Hunter S. Thompson, the Gonzo journalist.
Okay.
And so late one night, Hunter wrote the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He wrote a number of other great books. He wrote the official documentary, the official kind of history of the Hells Angels. So I'd worked with Hunter on a criminal case to get this woman out of prison. And late night, one night, we were in Aspen, Colorado, outside of his house, and we literally just blew up a bomb. He had wrapped a propane canister with nitroglycerin and gave me a 12 gauge shotgun, and we blew it up. So afterwards, as my heart is racing, we've been talking about different campaigns, different things. And he looks over and he says, "Son, do you know the meaning of the word politics?" And I had worked at Rock the Vote. I had worked for the G7 summit for President Clinton. I had done all of these, political things, and I could not answer this basic question. Voting? Wrong. Governance? No. Public policy? No. He said, "Look, son, the meaning of the word politics is the art of controlling your environment. And those who control it best are the ones who win the day. Those who are proactive, those who set the agenda are the ones who are the most successful." Right? If you're the ones like, "Hey, we're going to, put together this thing and we're going to be the first out on the market," it can be a very powerful place to be. Now, it's very vulnerable. People will attack you and criticize you, but you're the one that they're responding to. So make people react to you. Look no further than Tesla. Great example. And in business, there's a term of art called first mover advantage, where you're out there on the playing field first. And so when we sort of extrapolate this to the larger context, that what it means is that you're not just looking at things and then reacting to them. It means that you are a participant in the world around you and not just a spectator. And so this is a really important frame of reference, especially for communications, because it's so easy to just sit back and not do anything and not sort of define yourself. Because guess what? If you're not defining yourself, other people are. And that's what's so important about being proactive and having a communications plan, right? And so I would say that was one of the key things. And, being a participant, not a spectator, I'll kind of wrap it up with, it goes back to my open water swimming. Sometimes people ask me, what does open water swimming have to do with being successful in life or in business? I just was the first person to swim 40 miles down the Green River in almost 15 hours straight. I was the first person to swim across Lake Pontchartrain and the Caribbean. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I've also realized that a lot of the same universal truths apply. You set these audacious goals, you train and you prepare, and then you persevere, and then you build the right team to get you across. And me, the swimmer, I communicate what that vision is and what I need from them to be successful. And it's vitally important to making these things successful and to happening. So I also swim for a different reason, and that is to use my swimming as a way to bring awareness to some of the big issues we're facing. Being a participant, not a spectator, Kenny, you know as well as anyone that we have big issues facing our planet right now.
Yeah.
People can't, public education funding, healthcare. And my big one is I think water is the most critical issue of our time. If we do not have fresh water on this planet, we will die. And so I use my swimming to bring awareness to plastics in the Caribbean, cleaning up fresh lakes like Lake Pontchartrain, and then Western water issues and climate change out in the West. Rivers are shrinking right now, and it's really scary. So it's what we can do and how we can bring things to bear, and being, we're not just going to look at this life. We're going to go out and do something. And I'll leave you with this one final thought from the Hopi prophecy that says, do not look outside of yourself for a leader. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
I love that message. I just got done watching a little series on Netflix, and the title sounds a little iffy, but How to Become a Tyrant, something like that. And not that I'm trying to learn how to become a tyrant, but they showed how these people, relatively from small backgrounds, humble beginnings, followed a playbook, followed actions by spinning a message and influencing communication to build empires, like Gaddafi or Hitler, or Idi Amin. And it's not something to aspire to, but you could say this is the power of, how communication can really change and just get a whole culture behind them and impact the world. Now, if it's in the hands of the dark force, right? If you have the bad intentions, then you can create a lot of harm with communication. However, like you're saying, Matt, if you're looking to help bring awareness for a better good, to have a positive impact, you can use the same power to really transform what is possible for a lot of people. And I really love that you have that in your book. Ignition is really not just your take, but you've interviewed some really amazing people. And again, you shared some at the beginning, but if you could just share a few more while I've got it up on the screen. So if people are interested to check out this book and elevate their communication and learn from other powerful thought leaders, this would be a great place to go and do that.
You betcha. One of the chapters is about how Mark Williams, who's a former F-16 fighter pilot from the Iraqi war, and how they use communications in being successful in flying planes. I have a great chapter from Michael Antonucci, who's a producer at Disney, and he's a great. Gives us a lot of great stories about production and creating realities from whole cloth. I chronicle the MSN, the Microsoft Butterfly campaign that was spearheaded by a good friend of mine, Tom Giovagnoli, and kind of walking through how they used the hero cycle to create a little butterfly that was the biggest global advertising campaign of its era. And then there's a chapter that ends part one about my time at when I was starting my career at the famous restaurant Commander's Palace in New Orleans, where Chef Emeril Lagasse was just starting to cut his teeth, creating his signature slogan, BAM. And that was about learning situational awareness from one of the top restaurateurs in America. Then I got a great chapter on my time at Rock the Vote in Los Angeles, going around the country and registering young voters and using celebrities and musicians and rock stars. And, that was a lot of fun and to register to vote. But it was about the idea of using third-party validators and how we use other people to get people to do things. And that can be a very powerful tool.
It's incredible, really. So many interesting stories. And I like the way you have taken interesting stories to share concepts and put it into a book that also can be actionable, and you can improve. So it's personal development and entertainment, which is really powerful.
Some stories from the front lines. I've been sliced, diced, baked, chunked, and deep fried. So I've got a few stories to share.
No, that's great. I aspire to do that a bit more often. Is I can get caught up in the technical, the how-to, which is great. But I am a big fan of the story, right? And sharing the story, because it's a great way for people to take a lesson and to remember it and to see how it's applied. Yeah. Matt, you've had some awesome things to share with us, Growth Amplifiers. I'm excited to have had you join us, and my encouraging the people who are tuning in, check it out. Go to MatthewLMoseley.com. You can see more about his book, and you're getting just the tip of the iceberg of some great things that are featured in this book. You can see we're both big fans of reading. It's how you grow and stimulate your mind. So feed your mind with new great things, take new actions, get new results. Matt, you shared a great quote, which is probably a really great way to close this. But I'd ask you if you could end us off with one more thought, just something that you've learned on your journey that could help others on theirs as they continue to amplify and grow. Anything that you learned doesn't have to be communication related, but it could be. And I'll let you have the last word.
You betcha. You mentioned stories, and people talk about stories and telling stories, and they always say, well, nobody tells you how. Nobody really tells you how to tell a story. I've got a chapter in here about using the hero cycle as a way that we can put ourselves into a frame to tell stories and give meaning to our lives. So I encourage everybody to do that and use that tool. But it's been really wonderful being here, Kenny. I so appreciate the time. The only thing I like more than writing is talking about writing. So it's been a real fun time this morning.
It's been great. Thank you for your energy, for what you're doing, and for the effort of bringing awareness to our world and our water. We're all going to need that. We definitely appreciate you and look forward to catching you around and continue being an amplifier.
You betcha.
To show your support, take a moment to amplify this message by sharing it online. To connect with me or gain more business growth insights, visit www.growthamplifiers.com. Thank you for your support.